This is Sean Browning heading up the partner enablement here at Tealium. Also with me, we have Nicole Doon from our marketing group on the line as well. How you doing, Nicole?
Hi, everyone. Good, Sean. Thanks. How are you?
Doing all right. And so, we've got this partner webinar series where we're going to kick off on series or item 1. This will be an overarching idea of the items with Tealium, common questions, use cases, some challenges and differentiators. And so we really want to deliver an understanding, Nicole and I today, for helping all of our partners understand what's the difference between this, or what are some of the common questions we're hearing between that. And so that's what today is going to be focused on, and we'll record it. And so what I want to do is make sure that you guys know that we've got particular ways to interact throughout the console, or actually, hey, Nicole, tell us how the Q&A is going to work.
Sure. If you have any questions during our live webinar at all, please feel free to go ahead and type your notes into our chat message, and I'll go ahead and monitor that and answer your questions right away. But at the end of our webinar, we will go through a Q&A so that we can share your questions with the larger audience as a whole. And like Sean mentioned, we'll go ahead and record this webinar, so everything will be on demand for you to watch and kind of review after it's live.
Perfect. And today, our topics are going to include the Tealium differentiators from some of our competitors, some of our really clever, innovative capabilities. If there's something relevant, something top of mind, please, like Nicole just said, type that into the chat window. Product updates, right? We've got some capabilities that are going on that I can even show interactively on a live website, so we can see how things work. And then some of the case studies, some of the details. Who are some of our customers that are requesting certain innovations and features and capabilities? So we'll cover those as we move along through today. A little bit about me, just kind of a personalization slide. Just got finished about a month ago running an occasional 200-mile relay race. In California, there's a company called Ragnar. Up here in Oregon, it's called Epic. But there's different companies that do this, and it was kind of a fun 200-mile, 24-hour relay race along with 11 colleagues. But they travel around. I enjoy Crazy Tapas. This one's octopus that you see here. I've also had some chicken knuckles. That was kind of clever, and also some pig's ears and so forth. It's kind of fun to just kind of explore and expand the horizons. And then every once in a while, on the community service side, I like to volunteer at the Oregon Food Bank in a couple different places just to get back to the community. But enough about me. Let's move on to Tealium. One of the common questions that we get frequently is Tealium a DMP? Now, a DMP, these didn't exist until about 2, maybe 3 years ago, but they've come on the scene. And a DMP stands for a data management platform. And so agencies and partners, very common question, are asking, is Tealium a DMP? Well, we certainly do deal with a lot of data, so maybe we qualify. But what are the differences, right? So there are Crux and BlueKai and all kinds of technologies that exist out there that are a DMP. And Tealium, we're kind of in the tag management space, but now that we're in the data management space, we could be in that play and that spot. And so one point of clarification is, for DMPs, that's a place where customers will go and they could pay $1,000 to go acquire 1,000 visitors. But in Tealium, there's no place to do such a thing. There's no way to spend $1,000 with Tealium and then bring 1,000 visitors to the website, perform some sort of a lookalike type of a capability. And that's what DMPs do. DMPs can say, you tell us what you want your audience to look like, and we'll go get them. And they tie into third-party servers. So if you say, I want a demographic where I want to bring people that are between the age of 35 and 45 that are primarily female, that are college educated, that own their own home. Well, DMPs can tie into third-party servers to figure out, in a general zip code, what's the education level in general? Do they own their home, or do they live in an apartment complex in general? They can kind of infer or figure out if someone's male or female with kind of a certain level of confidence, but it's not really confident data. It's inferred data. So DMPs go out there and say, I'll give you a lookalike, and says, okay, for these 1,000 people, that'll cost $1,000. And if you want more people to come to your website, well, give us more money. And so you can keep buying your audiences or keep buying these visitors, and that way you get more eyeballs to your website. Now, it's not guaranteed. It's not 100% accurate. But DMPs, I mean, that's the best you got. So if you want to advertise, if you want to get more people to your website, if you want to have banners and control that stuff, you go to a DMP, here's my $1,000, they start serving banners, ads, they get the people to your website, and that's what a DMP does. Now, you can't give Tealium $1,000 to go buy 1,000 visitors. What we do instead is once people are on the website, we really tailor and personalize that experience and take action on the data. That's what we're about. So big differences from a DMP. DMPs don't store historical data. Tealium does. DMPs use third-party data as well as first-party data. Tealium only uses first-party data, right? It's your data, so you're guaranteed with 100% certainty that anytime someone types in with some sort of an authentication or customer ID, you know it's them. Guaranteed. No inference, no certain level of certainty or probability. This is, it is what it is with Tealium. And then also, Tealium data are updated dynamically, right? So if someone's on the site and they're performing an action, you know it with Tealium, whereas with certain DMPs, you might have to wait to the end of the day to realize that or be notified of that or be able to take action on that. So you're not waiting for a slow lagging type of a data source when Tealium is dynamic in real time. So major differences from a DMP, all depends on what customers are looking for, and then you, our partners, can really deliver the differences there to help separate Tealium from other organizations. What are some Tealium differentiators from other tag management systems? Well, think about this. So Tealium's got this tag library of about 800 different tags or pixels, and what we've done is we have specifically defined and programmed and delivered and developed these suckers so that every time there's a tag template, you can be certain that it's going to work, it's been vetted, it's been tried and tested, and it's reliable. For an enterprise class organization or enterprise class product, you want to make sure that you're going to get what you pay for. Now, others have gone out and said, yeah, sure, you can add any tag you want to. Yeah, sure, you can. We've got a bunch of tags too. But they've kind of partnered with that from a third-party source, and so they haven't tested and tried to integrate with 100% certainty the reliable integration because they're provided by a third-party service. So you want to watch out for those tag management systems that bring in tags through third-party service because it's probably not as reliable as you would be able to get with Tealium. Tealium's also built out some new features and functions, and we'll go through this in the live interface, but one of them is, if we are working with a production website and people can make changes on the fly, well, let's make sure that it's the right people making the right changes. And so we've introduced new capabilities having to do with multi-factor authentication. And so, it's something along the security principles of something you are, something you know, and something you have. Think about what your online banking is doing these days with an app. You have your mobile phone, you know your password, you have a fingerprint. You see this in Apple, you see this in Android. They are using multi-factor authentication, and so are we. And I'll show you what it looks like inside of Tealium very soon. What are some of the advantages of Tealium? What's going on with Tealium? What are some of the products? What are some of the capabilities? Well, I'll tell you that right now we've got this real-time engine. It is dynamic, it's live, it's a continual feed, it's streaming, which is completely different than the days of old, where it used to be like a web server log file analysis. You have to wait to the end of the day to get your data, then you would process your data, and then any information you have was something that happened in the last 6 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours in the last week. That's not good enough. You're always looking in the rearview mirror of what happened. Whereas with Tealium, when something occurs, it's happening right then and there. And when that occurs, then you're able to take action on the data. You get that real-time capability. It's a way of setting up your rules and setting up your audiences so that way when someone changes from a prospective customer or consumer to an actual consumer, then you can take action on the data. It's kind of a forward-looking data engine if you think about it, because it's able to take action on the data when it occurs, and it's all straight ahead of you. And inside of Tealium Audience Store, I'm going to show you where you can get your immediate feedback. That if you have an idea about a category or a segment, you get your immediate feedback of how many people fit that category or that definition. But it's not good enough to just have the data. You want to do something with the data and take action on the data. So now we have these events, right? These clicks, these actions of data. And we also have a way of putting the data into a relational database. So that way you have this relational database, or you have these events rows in the table that are going to feed your business intelligence and visualization tools. You can leverage Looker now, you can leverage Tableau now, because we're able to feed data straight into Redshift, Amazon's Redshift, and then from Redshift, you can tie in your own BI and visualization tools. Very, very powerful. If there's time, I'll show you. If not, we'll get into that later in a subsequent webinar. Innovation, continual. That is exactly what we do around here, is innovate. And so think about what we've got on the table that's different than last year. We have visitor stitching. People come to the website, they interact with your brand, they interact digitally through a tablet or a mobile device or through a web browser. Well, if someone is logging in or authenticating, providing their customer ID, Tealium now has this active way of processing the data continually to stitch together visitor interactions across different devices. So if someone authenticates on a mobile device and they type in a search term, however, they continue that visitor session with a brand on a laptop, well, Tealium's Data Cloud, Tealium's audience stream capability is able to understand who that person is across devices and stitch that data together. Advertisements across the sessions, or maybe when there's a purchase. If I buy $50 worth of something on my mobile app and $50 of something on a tablet, I am, after visitor stitching, a $100 lifetime value visitor. So we're able to understand more about the person because we do the processing about visitor-specific detail. There's also a way to take that visitor data, if we know who an individual is, supplement that information. Maybe you've got more attributes in a customer relationship management database, right? Like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or some other place like Zoho. And so if you can pull out those attributes, all centered around the visitor, then those customer attributes can be uploaded into Tealium. You can pull in your offline data. You can pull in point of sale data, CRM data, other information you might have about employees and their home office and their region that they happen to live in, things like that. If you wanted to pull in offline data, there's a way to upload that into Tealium's audience stream now. And now that we have audience stream, we're able to take action on the data in a right-time, real-time fashion. We also have two-way communicators called APIs or connectors, I should say. And so we have connectors that are allowing interoperability between Google and Facebook and many others. But I'm going to show you those in a live interface momentarily. I don't want to go through too many slides. I got a couple left, and then we'll kick into the live interface. But what I want to highlight is, if X, then Y. And this is something that's an idea that we might foster and propagate into the future, which is, if you're looking for something, if you're trying to solve a particular challenge, maybe we can name what those challenges are. And if we can, then where do you look for that solution? And so, if you're looking for data collection, sure, Tealium has tag management. Sure, Tealium has segmentation, and visitor stitching and so forth, but you also might want data collection. You might want to run your own data analysis. And so data collection, if you're looking for that, if your customer wants that, consider using Tealium's data access. That's the third leg of the stool. We have IQ, we have audience stream, and we have Tealium data access. If you're looking to turn on or turn off Google advertising, well, we have that as well now, and that's going to be something that's located in audience stream as one of the connectors. So if there's someone who's looking at a particular product, say a coffee mug, and then they go ahead and buy that coffee mug, well, you can tell Google Ads to turn off those coffee mug advertisements, so that person, after that purchase, no longer sees those advertisements, and you don't waste that ad spend. That's something provided as part of Audience Stream's connector set. And then if you're looking for segmentation, but you want to apply that to Facebook, well, that too is another Audience Stream connector, because as you build your segmentation, as you're defining your audiences, you can have Facebook ads be on the same page, provide the same type of a resource. That way, everything someone sees in Google and Facebook is corresponding to what you have on your digital domains. If you're looking for campaigns affecting a visitor, right? Not just the initial or the most recent. I hear this all the time with advertising partners, which is, I'd really like to know more about attribution. I want to know more about a visitor, not just the first thing that they saw or the most recent thing they saw, but I want to know all the touch points in between. Well, we've got that, and that's something already in Tealium IQ under the extensions category called a persist data extension, and that's a way of improving your attribution because it'll store all the campaigns that affect a visitor. Cross-device visitor stitching, again, that's just a function of audience stream, we've got that. But if there's time, I'm going to show you how we understand who an individual is based on their login or their customer ID, and then we could stitch that data together to understand more about their devices and their operating systems and some really cool cross-platform behavior. Of course, with audience stream, you don't have to wait for the end of day to get your data, right? So that's systems of old. The old ways of looking at data, they would have to maybe correlate and synchronize the data at the end of the day and then provide you access to get your data back. But if it's continual flowing, right? If I do something on the website and then my status changes because I'm no longer a prospective consumer and now I actually went through that conversion process, well, now I just converted. So why wait to the end of the day? You want to try and send me a thank you email right now, not tomorrow. So no longer waiting for the end of day reconciliation. Tealium's got that. It's right now, right time reconciliation in its audience stream. And if we are the source of the data, that same line of thinking there, then you don't have to buy your data back from vendor A and vendor B and vendor C, because if you're using Tealium Data Access, it's all in one place. If we're the source of the data, you don't have to buy it back from other vendors and other destinations, because they might provide their data with their own data set and their own filter. But if Tealium is that source of data, everybody's on the same page, right? Your analytics reports for Google and analytics reports for another analytics vendor will be all on the all coordinated because they all started with the same data, so they all match, right? So that's the nice thing about using Tealium. You don't have to buy your data back from different vendors, and you can take that other data you might have from your customer relationship management database or your point of sale system or your enterprise data warehouse. If you're looking to take your attributes about individuals or products or consumers, you can supplement your visitor data with your offline data through Tealium's omni-channel data upload. But it's a lot of information. But if you're looking for this, then there are particular solutions, and these are common questions I wanted to bring up here today. But I digress. Let's move over to Tealium. Let's show the live interface, and let me give you some ideas of what the new latest product features are. So if we take a live website and we take a look at what's going on, well, I'm leveraging a couple of technologies. First of all, Ghostery, Avidon's technology to figure out what pixels are firing on a particular page, number one. Secondarily, I use BuiltWith to understand more about how this content is served, how are they built. Like this one's built on a Magento platform, which is really cool, because if it's built on Magento, we've got a plugin that pulls all the Magento data elements out to supplement and build your data layer. And then they're leveraging PHP and jQuery, all good things to know when I'm trying to understand a bit more about a website and what technologies they're leveraging. And then third is Tealium's plugin, right? So if I go over to the Chrome store, I go up to Chrome, I pull down to apps. If I go into the Chrome web store and then I type in the word Tealium, then it's going to bring up my Tealium tools. And Tealium tools, highly recommended for you to pull down at your convenience. It works on all websites, regardless if those sites are Tealium customers or not. But what it does is, on a website, it helps uncover what are those data points and data variables, so that way you can do a little bit more discovery about the data. It's all about the data. So you would leverage Web Companion. Inside of Web Companion, it'll give you some details that if they're a Tealium customer, what is their account and profile? If they're a Tealium customer, what tags are running inside of the account? And then we can explore the data layer. The layer of information that has 5 or 6 components underneath of it. Number one is keywords and descriptions and other meta tags that might exist up in the head of the page. Query string parameters that would be up at the URL. Right? Really good for on-site search terms. If I search the entire store and I'm looking for eyewear, well, now look what it did. It threw eyewear up there as a query string parameter. And if you want to leverage that query string parameter, it's easy to do, because in Tealium's data layer, you just define a query string parameter and grab that definition and that variable. And so let's see, cookies. Right? Any Optimizely cookies, Marketo cookies, inbox type of variables, Other things, any kind of cookie that exists on the page, we can grab those, listen for those, leverage those. By clicking Add, I can then save my change and apply that to the Tealium console. And that way, Tealium is going to listen for that data variable from now on, and you're in control of the data without any programming or asking IT to program something for you. JavaScript variables that exist on the page, and also data object variables, right? So when you build out a data object, this does take strategy, it does take design, it takes you, our partners, some time to understand more about what the customer is trying to achieve so that you can build out this data object and understand more about the person, who this is, what they're trying to achieve, what products they've looked at, and other cool details. But data discovery, right? The Tealium Web Companion, that's one of the innovations that Tealium's got that's really hard to find anywhere else. Others have browser plugins, but they're not quite as interactive as Tealium's. So now that we understand a little bit more about the data, once we get into the interface, then we can log into Tealium and see some of the capabilities and features that we've brought online. So now, you know, of course, you've got our tag library that anytime you add a tag to the account, then you can see those tags listed here. When we're going in and say we want to add another tag, then I click on tags and I click on add tag, and this is the place where we'll see things like, here's a common question, does Tealium work with Optimizely? Well, Tealium does work with Optimizely, both in a synchronous and an asynchronous capacity. So, you know, there's some free tag management systems out there that force everything to be asynchronous, but that's not how Optimizely prefers to be used. They want to be done used in a synchronous fashion. So Tealium can work with Optimizely in a synchronous mode and work just as it's designed. Other tags, other capabilities are found throughout the categories, right? So tons of analytics vendors, affiliate tracking, display advertising, and anytime you want to add any of these to your account, you'd click on add, and we walk through this three-step wizard, right? Tag configuration, load rules, and data mapping. Now, one of the clever innovation that we have for Tealium is this mapping capability. So if I bring up Google's Universal Analytics, then if we walk through this three-step wizard, right, you add your UA ID and other details that otherwise you would just, you know, have to hard code into the JavaScript. We've turned into a fill-in-the-blank type of an exercise. Not all tags load on all pages all the time, so load rules indicate when a pixel will fire, right? So optimization, personalization, pixels only fire on test pages. Email pixels would only run on landing pages or conversion pages. But with Google Analytics, and any analytics pixel for that matter, it's going to run on all pages. But here's another clever innovation Tealium has that's hard to be found anywhere else, which is a mapping toolbox. We've taken, you know, for any of the details and properties that exist on a website, even segments and cookies and dates and variables, whatever the data points happen to be, you can map those straight from the page over to something called a mapping toolbox. We've taken the data dictionary of some of the most common pixels, and we've built it out so that way for Google's Universal Analytics, when you need to map your event category, you need to map your event action and event label and values. When you're mapping these variables, pull them right off the page, map them right into this, and then hit apply. And so if I want to grab a particular piece of information, let's try document title for this time being, select the destination, and I click on title. Well, now I've just mapped the document title property right off the page and mapped it right into the way that Google's Universal Analytics is going to receive that. And so that's the idea, mapping of the data. Grab it from the page on the client and then map it to the way that that respective pixel or technology wants to receive that. And therein lies the way of being very efficient and very deliberate in setting up the pixels and mapping the data. If the data layer and the load rules and the tags have to do with the tag management piece of Tealium, then we have extensions. Now, extensions are mapping the data, and so we've got some pretty clever extensions, and I could talk for a whole other hour on all of these types of extensions, but let me highlight a couple of new ones. First is, if we want to take action on the data, we have a way of now serving pop-ups when, you know, it's no longer PC to say pop-up. It's a modal offer is what we'll call it now. And what the idea is that on the occasion that someone qualifies based on a badge or a segment or a criteria, we want to serve some content or an offer up on the page. And so if someone happens to be a fan, if someone happens to be a loyal visitor, or they're a big spender, or they are someone who's happy about free shipping, once they qualify for a free shipping badge, we can serve content. We could say, hey, here's some free shipping. However, Nicole's going to get the free shipping, Sean might not. You want to be able to be very deliberate and personalized in delivering this content to identify who's going to get this message. So if we look at the free shipping offer, right, where based on a certain trigger, right, whatever classification happens to be, you're going to serve a particular offer to a particular person that qualifies for that, then what happens is on the website, you will see that when someone gets into looking at the product categories, and if you look at the criteria, if someone hits the right criteria, then there's that pop-up. And that's going to be personalized based on who that individual is, based on their actions and their criteria and what they're looking for. So that's the idea. Serving content, taking action on the data, it's all about the data. Inside of Tealium also, beyond the extensions, we have some new resource locking capabilities. If I have some tags or I've set up some data points, notice these labels here, this blue and pink, orange, light blue kind of thing. So what we have now is a way of making sure that the data you modify and manipulate and set up isn't something that's going to be modified by someone else. So inside of Tealium, we take security very seriously, and there's a couple ways of doing so. And first of all is resource locks. And so we can understand more about labels, we can understand more about categorizing content and categorizing tags. And so from the drop down here, if I go down to manage labels, I'm able to define labels like e-commerce and campaign and agency and so forth. And that way I can declare my own label. I've got my specific objective, my particular tag, tag folder, label, if you will. But then I can enable this resource lock, yes, and then I can identify exactly who is going to have access to this and who can assign or break those locks. And that's a way of keeping people on task so that the marketing agencies can have access to their marketing variables, analytics agencies can have access to their analytics variables, but the two won't cross and they weren't able to modify each other's variables, right? So this is a great way to keep everybody on task by using resource locks, because then you get to see categorization exists. However, there's one that's locked out for a custom container because you might want to restrict that down to only have give access to certain people. So resource locking is a way of locking it down so some people don't mess with your hard work. We also have some capabilities, and we talked about this at the beginning of the webinar, which is the ability to lock down and authenticate and understand who an individual is different than someone else. And so if we go look at the setting for the password policy, not only do we have minimum password length in uppercase and lowercase and so forth, and you're able to make sure that that meets your criteria, your customer's criteria for their security methods, but now we have a way of setting up the multi-factor authentication, right? Now it's not enabled, but if I click this button, we'll turn on the multi-factor authentication, and I'm not going to do that exactly right now, but what this does is it allows for the ability to pass a token, pass a text message with a certain authentication identifier to your mobile phone. And what it does is it says, okay, it requires Google Authenticator. Once you enable this, then once you start logging in, there's going to be an additional login that asks you, what is your token? What's your security token that we just passed to you, right? You might know who you are. You might know what your password is, but to share email or to share accounts back and forth, that's not very secure unless you've got your mobile device that we can text you a number, right? A certain set of integers that you can type into the account. And so now we've got this multi-factor authentication to make sure that you know your password, you know how to get into Tealium, however, you've got this additional token as an extra means of making sure that person really is the person who they say they are. MFA, multi-factor authentication. You see this online banking, you see this with investments and retirement accounts and so forth. Very important to have, and we're adjusting that and making sure that we abide by those same kind of rules. So those are a couple of things that are new and clever with Tealium. Additionally, beyond tag management, right? TIQ would tell you what people are doing. Let's move over to Audience Stream. Audience Stream would tell you who an individual is. And so Audience Stream is a way of understanding in a real-time, right-time mode, right? As data are coming across the wire, sub 3 seconds, quite a bit faster than that actually, but I'll stick with that number. Then as people are interacting on the page, as people are performing certain actions or classifying themselves from non-consumer to consumer or non-converter to converter or browser to customer, then we're able to take action on the data. And you can even see here cart abandoner. How many people are cart abandoners? We've assigned that flag or that badge, but then you can see that once they no longer are an abandoner because they complete a purchase, there's an order ID that's available on the visit. Well, now they're removed out of that badge. So 54 times they were removed out of the cart abandoner badge because they didn't abandon their cart so much as they completed it. So 65 cart abandoners were assigned. However, 54, that badge was removed. People did complete their cart and were able to do that dynamically, right? This is that very valuable, rich, forward-looking data. We have a way of showing you what the live information looks like. If I bring up the perspective, right, the audience discovery perspective to show you all the different segments that might exist in an account, well, then what I'm going to highlight here is the different segments, right? A cart abandoner, privacy hound, someone who's a fan of aviator sunglasses. Now, the reason this count is low is this is a single person on the website right now, happens to be me, on the demo website, and I am one person, but I belong to multiple categories. And I could go over to a larger account with a little bit larger volume, and if I do such a thing, then you get to see a little bit more data coming across the wire dynamically. But being the time that it is, I'm not sure how much data we're going to have on our live website either, but we'll have enough. If I switch over to Discover and I pull down to Audience Discovery, we can see how many corporate users there are, how many are defined or anonymous, how many are TIQ fans, and the like. If you're able to build out a segment, an audience, a way of categorizing or classifying people, right? If I've logged into the site, I am a known user. I also use Tealium. And because I've been here a number of times, I could also be categorized as a fan. So even though I'm one person, I could belong to multiple classifications or badges here. And you can build these out because this is part of the strategy you provide to your customer. Now, this is telling you that fleeting idea of how many people are in that category right now. But like I said, at this time of day, this might not be relevant enough to be a common window for understanding how many visitors meet this classification. So we've added this historic point of view to understand over time how many people meet that criteria since the beginning of May, right? So now we'll let this bake out and understand, well, if I want to know these badges and how many are fans and corporate users and so forth, and I have a hypothesis or I have a test or I have a theory about, I want to build out a criteria that say who are the people that visit the website between the hours of noon and 6 p.m. that use their mobile devices, tablet and mobile, right? So I can start breaking that out. But as I build out that idea, I want to test that dynamically. I want that live feedback, and that's what this provides you, right? So this is saying since May 1st, you know, it's brought in another 16,477 visitors, another 3,200, and so now we start seeing the long tail. A majority of these individuals are main corporate site visitors, but we also have 10,000 in fan category, 6,100 in the badge, 3,300 as a Tealium user, 2,900 users that are known, and you see how that works. You get to know your populations of your segments. And that's what this is designed to do. This is not another reporting interface so much as to help you understand, number one, live continual data coming across the wire or the size of your populations. But how do I get these? How do I build a Tealium user or a fan classification? Well, I go up to Enrich, and then later on in subsequent webinars, we'll go into more detail about how Audience Stream works and what each of the attributes mean. But if I go to attribute, we have ways of latching on to who is a visitor, right? IQ tells you what someone's doing, type in a search term, for example, but Audience Stream tells you who is a visitor, and you get to latch on and tell Tealium, this visitor ID is going to latch onto a login, right? So if there's a site that has a login, then you just tell Tealium through its convention to latch on to however someone is authenticating. And once you have latched onto that, now AudienceStream can understand who an individual is, right? So that visitor ID can latch on to social media ID, could latch on to an email address, and maybe there's a customer ID or a customer handle. One way or the other, you could define a visitor ID to be one of those variables, and now you know who a person is. We can also build out attributes to understand more about things that they're doing. How many times have they been to the website, or how many times have they downloaded a particular document? If they're moving through a conversion process, we have funnels, right? How do they get to step 1, then step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, right? You can see how people move through a continual funnel, if you will, in that session. And if it's going to span over a certain time, right, over a number of series of visits, then you might want to create a timeline instead. But either way, one thing we can do is if someone's moving through a 5-step funnel and they drop off on step 3, we have a way of understanding that. We know where they dropped off, have a pretty good idea of understanding a bit more about that because we can assign a trait. A trait is a way of understanding a certain property. Like Sean made it to step 1, went from step 1 to step 2, that means the trait is going to update itself to step 2. And then if I move to step 3, then the trait removes step 2 and lists step 3 as my last known trait. If I abandon that session, I left the funnel, right? I abandoned the conversion, I abandoned the process, but my trait stays static, that it remembers me as I got to step 3 out of however many steps. A great way of understanding more about the visitors on the site, and that trait supplements that visitor ID. Really cool stuff. It's all about the visitor, and so forth. We got more detail, but as you define and declare these badges, these attributes, and you pair those with the rules that say only give me these people to qualify for this badge if their favorite color is blue and the day happens to be Wednesday. Well, a rule would declare, dates and favorite colors. The attributes would assign that badge if the rule is true, and if you pair the attributes and rules together, you are building out an audience. And an audience is that set of people that you can target. And it's dynamic, right? I am no longer a prospective customer, I am now a customer, right? So I changed audiences. It's a continual flow. I can't wait to the end of the day for this to be synced up or updated, right? I want this to be done in a dynamic fashion. And if we have these audiences, then you can do something about it. And that's where I go over to action. I'm going to list these connectors, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about what are connectors and what do we do with the data. If we know who a person is, then I go into the connectors, and then I list out what we can do. It's a two-way street, two-way connector that says, if I know that Sean is Sean, well, now I've got some pretty hard authentication. I can send that to ExactTarget. I could send that to an email service provider, or even to a customer relationship management system, right? Those things require certain authentication, not inferred authentication, not, yeah, you kind of look like this person. No, this is, you know who this person is, that way that data belongs in this particular system. And so we can pass data across the wire simply by having the API username and password, getting into the details for which actions we want to perform, right? Add them to a list or remove them from a list, or update an object or update a record, right? These are actions you do with a CRM system because we know exactly who a person is. And we can create actions, right? So if someone moves through the process, they perform a download, we could send them an email. And so we'll pull the qualification criteria out of Tealium that says, they have performed some sort of a sign up or a request of some sort. And then we would be able to pull out the detail straight from, in this case, ExactTarget, and be able to send them those ExactTarget message or campaigns that you've created over in ET. And so now you're pairing together Tealium audiences with ExactTarget business value, and now you can start saying these people that qualify with this action get this message. And this is a two-way street where we would be able to pull down those options straight out of their database, so you can mix and match right here, and then set up the triggers and the actions to save your change. And now anytime someone performs that criteria, becomes qualified, changes their status, this rule will kick into effect and you can take action on the data. Very, very, very powerful. And the same thing applies not just for CRM, but also applies for Facebook advertising, right? You can build segments inside of Tealium, and then you can leverage those inside of Facebook advertising. You can build those segments and criteria, and then understand more about a person who looks at coffee mug, right? If I'm looking at a particular coffee mug or a set of coffee mugs and I'm going to buy those coffee mugs, well, I'm a prospective customer. But what you can do is, inside of Tealium, get in here and say, okay, if I'm a prospective customer, give me all those people that look like they're going to buy coffee mugs, and let's start advertising to them. But wait a second, we just sensed that there's an order ID. Since Tealium IQ knows that there's an order ID and a purchase was completed, we can now tell Google dynamically, not end of the day, but I mean right now, let's remove that visitor out of that list. Let's turn off the messaging. Let's turn off the advertisements across the web, so that way Sean doesn't see advertisements for coffee mugs anymore, right? And typically I'm going to see that advertisement for a coffee mug for probably 20% or 30% less than what I just bought it for, ironically. Just the way the web works, it seems. But you know, if you can remove visitors out of that list or that segment, if you can turn off that advertisement, then what that does is it cuts down on any kind of potentially frustrated customer, and it cuts down on the spending that you're putting out there, so that way you're not targeting individuals that shouldn't be targeted. And so that's a way of cutting down on the ad spend and making this quite a, tighten this up, making it quite a bit more efficient. So double click. Facebook advertising. Very clever stuff. Email service providers, right? And we keep adding this. We keep adding to this list. So Eloqua and Marketo, those are new connectors. Even more new than that is Optimizely, and even greater freshness date is Lithium, right? So we keep adding these tiles here, and they're all having to do with understanding more about the person, understanding more about the data, and then being able to take action on the data at the right time. And if there's some sort of a connector, some sort of a method you have, and it's not listed here, then we have a catch-all. We have a way of getting that detail into Tealium, taking that Tealium data straight from the webhook, give us a username and a password to connect to, and then based on a post type of a function, for example, then we can choose the audience straight out of Tealium, right? Those individuals that sign up for a free trial or something along those lines, or contact me now, but we could send this to your API URL. And that way you receive the data that says, let's map who an individual is based on their login, right? And so that login, that last login that they used, let's use that as a visitor identifier, and then let's supplement the information with additional attributes, right? So you might know more about this person, their favorite color, things that they really like. You can pull data out of the customer relationship management system or the corporate database about what's their home office, what language do they speak, attributes, all hinging around who a person is, right? Audience string telling you who that person is. And that way when you save this, now you can communicate back and forth, a two-way communication. We know something about someone on the site, you can pull that in through CRM, or you can pull it in through POS, or you can pull it in through Enterprise Data Warehouse, right? Connectors. And where there's not a connector, maybe you want to upload through some other means, right? If you can do a data export out of your Enterprise Data Warehouse, instead of leveraging a connector, let's go to Enrich, let's go to Omnichannel, and let's pull that additional data into Tealium, even though it might exist elsewhere, offline perhaps. Well, use the file transfer protocol and send it to us, or send it through an Amazon bucket, or pass it through an FTP secure transfer protocol connection, right? The definitions, you would map these definitions and figure out, again, who is this person? Because if I'm going to upload data, it's going to be those attributes that are centered around the visitor ID and understanding who a person is based on their login or based on their email address or what we have to work with. And based on who this person happens to be, then we can map the columns of data. Who's this person? What is their email address? What is their home office? What is their preferred language? Things along those lines. We can map that offline data straight into Tealium to enhance and supplement that visitor record, all for the purpose of understanding more about who that visitor is and synchronizing the data. Offline data upload, API connections through our connectors. It's all in there. It's like the Prego pasta sauce. It's in there. Offline data upload, historical analysis for understanding how big your segment populations happen to be, things along those lines, right? So now we've got a way of setting up the connectors, setting up badges, understanding the enrichments and the attributes about your visitors. It's not just good enough to have that data in Audience Stream. Once you've got these capabilities set up in Audience Stream, this is another one of the things that feeds right back to Tealium IQ to supplement your data layer, right? We talked about at the beginning of this, you know, query string parameters, first-party cookies, JavaScript variables. But once we want to talk about things, segments that you've built inside of Audience Stream, those feed right from Audience Stream right back here, so that anybody who's a cart abandoner, let's target them. And I can take that cart abandoner segment, I can set up a tag, I can go define and declare a tag, maybe through Strong View, for example. I'll click on Add right there, and then as I move through my data mapping, I can say, give me that cart abandoner segment I built an Audience Stream, and that cart abandoner I'm going to pass over to Strong View. And if there was a toolbox, or maybe they want a custom variable or a custom variable.cart abandoner, then you have a way of setting up custom variables and mapping that data across the wire. Right? Audience Stream data can feed your tags as well, so that way Tealium is that unified data source, that base that says, I've got these badges, I've got these segments, I understand this information about my audience, so now when I send it to my 25 or 250 different pixels on my website, they're all on the same page. Pretty clever. When you can take action on the data, right? We have these connectors to send data to other technologies, but sometimes you just want to get a handle on the data, and we'll get into this in another subsequent webinar as well, but data access. And data access is a way of getting your hands on the data. Sometimes you want to see it in a dashboard application. Sometimes you want to use a visualization application. Maybe you want to use Looker, or you want to use Tableau. Well, now we have a way of putting the data into a repository, either into a directory or a folder, file by file, so you can see row type of W3C data, or maybe you want it in a database sense, so that way you can pull up the information that has to do with understanding more about a person, or excuse me, understanding more about the data in the database from your digital domain, right? So if we put this information about your visitors and your interactions into a Redshift database, then Redshift, there's a Redshift connector inside of Tableau. There's ways for other business intelligence tools to tie in to these databases to then pull out the information, and it's updated dynamically, right? So you're not waiting again for the end of the day for the data to be synchronized and be released to you. This is occurring and being updated dynamically throughout the day. So when you're in Tableau, you hit refresh and you see the updated data. Data access. Incredibly powerful. Huge amount of data, lots of it. It's the right amount of data. It's not pre-filtered, right? This is not going to be the stuff that you pull out of Google Analytics, because once data goes to GA, it applies its filters. If you would do a data export out of Google Analytics, you've got some summarized, already filtered, already semi-massaged data that is not going to be a clean data set. You need to have Tealium's data access console for that data collection capability we talked about a little while ago. So, data access. And we'll get into that in greater detail in one of the webinars. The connectors, right? We continually keep adding onto our ecosystem. The data, you can continually enrich through attributes and rules to build out an audience. You can upload the data through the omni-channel method, all to feed Tealium IQ, right? So that way you've got this great ecosystem and you're able to take action on the data through a forward-looking, real-time action engine. And that's how Tealium ties together. So now that we've gone through a couple of features, we've talked about some of the advantages, we've talked about some of the differentiators, we want to move over to the Q&A portion. I want to see what questions we might have in the queue. And so I'll bring up and ask Nicole. Hey, Nicole, do we have any questions in the console that we might want to address?
We had a few questions come up. One was if you could explain a little bit more about what a traditional DMP really is.
Oh, that's a great question. The DMPs, right, data management platform, the DMPs are a means of acquiring visitors to your website, right? So that's something that TLM doesn't do, so we're not going to replace any kind of a DMP. But DMPs are a great way to say, I'm going to spend $1,000, I'm going to acquire 1,000 visitors, and hopefully with the more people I bring to my website, if I play the odds, then with a 1 or 2% conversion rate, maybe I'll get more money. So DMPs, you spend money with them, they bring people to your website, and that's a great way of doing advertising. However, if you have a 1 or 2% conversion rate, the DMPs don't really improve that so much as what Tealium would do is really improve upon the personalization and the usability to make sure that you are able to work with people on the website in real time dynamically as they're interacting with your brand. And you're not having to wait to the end of the day. You're able to tie in your historical information. And so Tealium would supplement or complement a DMP. So DMPs would bring traffic to your website, and then Tealium would help improve the conversion rates once they're on the site.
Cool. Thanks for the clarification, Sean. And where could I look, where could someone look for more detailed information about audience stream functionality and the implementation and kind of process as a whole?
Ooh, great question. Yeah, so the functionality, we've got the Tealium Learning Community. So if you have a login to Tealium in the upper right corner, you'd go to the Help Center. Otherwise, you just type in community.tealiumiq.com, and that'll give you all of our documentation, all of our videos, all our tutorials, our how-tos. And so there in the Tealium Learning Community is where we store all of our documents, but also it's a place where people can interact with each other, type in questions, and then as a question gets typed in and submitted, then it goes out to the ether, and then other people are able to respond back to that question and answer that question. So audience stream how-tos, audience stream implementation, audience stream differentiators, a lot of those things are included in the Tealium Learning Center, and if there's something that's not found there, type in your question and people will answer that and direct you and put you in the right direction.
Sean, and the last question is around mobile. Was there any intent to support Windows phones for MFA in the future?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because with the MFA, multi-factor authentication, this is a brand new feature for us out of the gate, and we're supporting the Apple devices and the Google devices, and not Windows just yet. We're leveraging the Google Authenticator, and so that supports only 2 platforms presently. As there are more requirements or requests for us to support Windows Mobile, then I'm sure we would be able to expand that direction, but it's actually not my place to say or dictate the feature functionality or requests or engineering direction. So we'd have to take it up with engineers to determine prioritization. But yeah, as there's a bigger demand for that, then I can envision that would come into play. But for right now, it's just Google and it's just Apple devices.
Thanks, Sean. Well, that was the last question that we have for this session.
Oh, fantastic. Well, then we'll start wrapping up. On behalf of me. Hey, Nicole, thank you very much for making this happen. This webinar has been quite successful, and thanks for working with me to kick this off for the 2015 webinar series. Very exciting. On behalf of Tealium, we'll wrap it up here, and then want to put out for next week. Well, actually, you know what? I even have a summary slide. You can't have unified marketing if you don't have a unified understanding of your visitors across your entire digital stack, right? Unified marketing, all in one place. If you've got the true source of data, then everybody's on the same page, but you can't have that if it's not across your entire platform. Tealium's gone beyond tag management. It's all about data management. It's about the data. We've got visitor centricity, visitor-centric analysis. You can take personalized action. You can be very personable with your communication. So that's where Tealium is aiming for, and it's all technologies that we've built ourselves as opposed to something that has been purchased and pushed together and so forth. And so the innovation hits just keep coming, right? We keep building this stuff. We've got the Web Companion, we've got the multi-factor authentication, we've got the visitor stitch and the enrichment capabilities. And so we're just going to keep that up, and we'll keep launching webinars and keep you guys informed. And on behalf of Tealium, thank you guys for being partners, and we will hopefully see you next week. Thanks all.
Thanks.